All right. The time is 2:58 p.m., and we are back on the record, Ms. Vellum.
The organization would first like to repeat the objections that we raised at the start of this hearing. Specifically, the charge letter, as it was written, was vague and did not contain any specific charges for which the claimant could prepare a defense. The hearing was held outside the required time limits of the agreement, and so we would repeat those objections as a procedural defect that should have stopped the hearing. But the hearing officer chose to overrule those for reasons known only to him. The other piece that we would point out is the conflicting testimony between Charging Officer Toast and Lieutenant Panettone. Mr. Toast's testimony was that the incident was on March 30th. Again, that specific date could have been cleared up by putting the specifics in a charge letter as is required under the agreement, but that wasn't the case. Lieutenant Panettone testified that it was April 2nd. So there's conflicting testimony regarding the actual date of the incident. But the record that was developed today demonstrates that on the day that Mr. Blanton was called to cover the janitor position, he performed the duties as required in the bulletin. However, it seems as though Mr. Blanton was tasked with correcting a week's worth of oversight in just one day of assignment, which is impossible. Mr. Blanton was performing the tasks expected of him during his shift, up until he started feeling sick. When that happened, he took a break and sat down. The charging officer and the lieutenant later saw him looking groggy, which made sense as he was clearly sick and needed a break. There's absolutely nothing in the record that indicates Mr. Blanton failed to comply with any instructions. Mr. Blanton and Mr. Dalloway's testimony demonstrates that he performed the duties of his position in accordance with the posted job bulletin. Unfortunately, the charging officer failed to notice the completed tasks and only provided testimony about his observation of Mr. Blanton at the end of his tour of duty when he was sick. This in no way characterizes Mr. Blanton on the date in question. He performed the duties to the best of his ability and in a manner consistent with the posted bulletin. We've heard a lot of testimony and leading questions from the hearing officer to the charging officer regarding sleeping and properly marking off. We've heard a lot of testimony and questions about being sick, but ironically, those were never listed as charges against the claim. So, the record will show that the claimant was charged with unsatisfactory work performance. However, we have demonstrated that Mr. Blanton performed an overwhelming task to the best of his ability, and there's absolutely no basis for the charge. So, we would request that the charges be removed from the claimant's personnel record and that the claimant be reinstated and made whole in every way.
Ms. Vellum, your comments and objections will be part of the record. They are noted, and again, I'm going to close this hearing at this time. I want to thank everyone for their participation. It is 3:02 p.m., and we are adjourned.